Okay. We are. All right. You're listening to The Crave Show. We're back with Chris, JRuss, and this week we have Doug Barron. Doug, thank you so much for being here, man. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Very
man.
excited.
I'm glad you're here. JRuss, how's it going?
Well, you guys just heard it all. I'm going to say to the public that I'm a little tired and
oh man,
just got a lot of work going on right now.
I wish we would have pressed record about 30 seconds earlier, man. It would have been fantastic. I'm so sorry to all the listeners, the audience. You guys missed like just an awesome interaction. Man.
One of these days, so Chris, we're gonna it's gonna be like we joined the studio and you hit record and I didn't even see it, and then you're gonna have to be you're gonna have to be an editor at that point, because if we talk about some nonsense that you don't want on the show, then you're gonna have to change it out. But
dude,
that's
so good.
two times where we said we should have been recording.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that should be in the waiver or whatever. Just like once you sign on, it automatically starts recording.
That's right.
Bingo.
Yeah, it's going, man.
Doug's smarter than he looks. Don't underestimate Doug. Just because of the mustache.
Actually, I'm kind of debating if I want to trim it or grow it out a little bit more. We'll see.
Did you ask your girlfriend?
She'll say trim it. Yeah. So I guess I'll trim it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So for the people who are going to join us, I don't know who's going to join us tonight, but they're going to join us later. Doug, let's hear about you. Who are you? Just for the people who perhaps are not aware of your existence.
Yeah, dude, we've been sitting here talking for like 45 minutes waiting on you to show up. I don't know where you've been drifting around.
25 minutes.
Come on, man.
25 years.
I've been biting my tongue. I wanted to ask him 1,000 questions and I couldn't do it because we hadn't been recording. So
now here we are. There's no time like the present.
I'm ready to hear.
Okay. Well, currently, I'm a member of STC Rhythm XP. We are a four-way team that competes in four-way open in the United States and across the globe. What else do? I do big ways. I've been jumping for 20 years. I have about 12,000 skydives. I have had my tandem rating at one point. I have an AFF rating, a coach rating. I guess it would be maybe easier if you kind of asked me questions about myself. I don't really. It's hard for me to talk about myself. I don't really like doing that. But
so when you started jumping in what 2000? Would you say 23 years?
20 years.
What'd you say?
So 2003 was my first jump. Mm-hmm.
Where was that?
It was in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania.
And then did you that was a tandem, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So I'm a second generation skydiver. My father jumps. He still jumps. And I have been around drop zones since I was about 5 or so. So that's when my dad started jumping. He took me on my first 2 tandems. And there was no pressure. Like, I've been around drop zones for forever. And then I was like, hey, let's go, take me on a tandem. So he took me on my first 2, and then it was probably maybe a month or so after my second tandem that I was like, hey, I want to start an AFF. And he was like, okay. He is not an AFF instructor, so all the other instructors at the drop zone, and they had known me for quite some time. They kind of passed me around. It was kind of one of those things like in the family. So got passed around through AFF. And then, so that was when I was 16. I was still in high school. And I only made like a couple hundred jumps between when I started and when I graduated high school. I played sports and, had other jobs and such other things like that. So didn't jump as much as I do now, for sure, in high school.
So wait, when you started jumping, were you a junior? Sophomore?
Yes. Junior.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's got to be cool. Like, you're a junior in high school and you're skydiving. Like, were you telling? I'd be telling all my friends. Like, did you tell them? Did you talk about it? Did they care?
Yeah, they knew, and I don't know if they cared or not. it was, I remember senior year at least, that, we were kids in high school and we would have parties on the weekend and everything. And if it was a Friday night and I was jumping on Saturday, I was like, no, guys, like, I got to get up early and jump and be ready to go. So maybe there was some friction in high school, but they were understanding. It was like, oh, you're going to jump out of airplanes tomorrow, so that's cool. Like, you can be the DD tonight. And I was like, all right, cool. But
yeah, that's cool,
not
man.
advocating underage drinking or anything like that.
So, okay. So I know that it wouldn't be part of your normal story, Doug, but I'm wondering, because I think it's an important part of your story. Are you comfortable talking about the incident in Sebastian?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Just kind of started from there. So 5 years ago, April 12th, 2018, I had an AAD activation while landing. It was a Cypress unit, and it was still in expert mode and not in speed mode. At the time, I was jumping a VK Hybrid 75, and my standard turn was a left-handed 450. So as I rolled out of my turn, there's a bit of a funny thought process that happened. I rolled out and I felt the bottom end and I was like, I finally got it. Like, I could feel myself accelerate. And then almost immediately after that, I felt the reserve come off my back. So I had a 2-out scenario. And essentially, like, as I rolled out, I was carving and then the reserve came off this side and it essentially stalled both canopies. And then I fell onto asphalt. And the reason I know approximately the height is because I was above the tail of the otter and I remember looking down at it. So I fell straight down from about, we estimate like 35-ish feet. And I missed the tail of the otter and missed a fence and landed between the two of them on the asphalt. I had a compound tib fib on my right leg. I broke my left heel in half and I broke my back as well. And after I was in the hospital for 3 weeks and then a rehab facility for 2 weeks after that, and then in a wheelchair for another, I started walking again in like August, so another couple months of a wheelchair. And it's through the year of recovery that I went through, it was a year and 10 days before I made my next jump. I kind of took it upon myself to try to educate people about the situation. At that point, I was on Rhythm, and we were competing internationally. We're doing very well. The Rhythm brand is a fantastic brand. It's just an honor to be a part of it. And I figured instead of shying away from this because I made a mistake, I could use this and a little bit of the publicity to try to educate people about what was going on. And the reason that I fired the Cypress was because the unit did not malfunction. Like, it activated, it did everything that it was supposed to do. But in my gear check process, I never had it in my process to make sure I would check what mode the unit was in. I had a changeable mode Cypress, and what had happened was about a month before we had gotten new units, and I had that installed by a rigger that is not my standard rigger or my normal rigger that I use. And my normal rigger would put the unit into speed mode, and I just put it in the back of my head. So when I turned my units on and did my gear check, I would just make sure that I saw the arrow down, a 0, and the red light on, and I wouldn't actually make sure I knew what mode the unit was in. It was the third jump of the day on that canopy, so I was like flirting with the limit all day until it actually fired. And then I spent the next year, spoke at PIA about the situation, and unfortunately, it happens a lot at the higher level in the sport, and they're influential people, and it's still happening now, and it's frustrating for me because I tried to make it very public about what happened and how we can change that. And I mean, it's a simple thing, right? Just make sure that you know what mode the unit's in. And now I I have that in my gear check process. And yeah, I mean, like I said, unfortunately, it's still happening. And I think that when people start jumping the new Schumann wings, like the Leias, the VKs, the Peregrines, the Petras, they need to understand that, yes, it's a higher performance wing for sure, but like all of your equipment needs to match what you're doing with that, and you need to understand how that works. This is not, what I'm about to say is not by any means like a law or anything, but what I have talked to people about is if you are jumping one of those parachutes, you're above 2.2 wing loading and you're doing a 270, you should have a expert or a speed or extreme, whatever the manufacturer is, but you should have the unit that has a higher activation speed when you are stepping into that realm. Because a lot of people see that and they're like, oh, sweet, like I want to do big turns, I want to go fast, you want to do those things, and they don't understand the risks that can be involved with that based on the gear that you're jumping. So do a gear check if you are in that realm of people, because to kind of backtrack just a little bit, I was doing at that time previously that year, I was doing some canopy coaching with Matt Leonard, and we had a fly site. And at that point, I was on an 84 Valkyrie at like a 2.4 wing loading, and I was doing a 270, and I was still hitting like 77, 78 miles an hour, which is the activation speed. So I think that, and it wasn't a great turn. It wasn't perfect at all, but we can still be very, very close to those limits. So just a reminder for everybody, do a great gear check. You know, we can minimize a lot of preventable malfunctions through gear checks, and know the equipment that you're doing or that you're jumping, and understand that the risks that are associated with progressing in the sport, especially in the canopy realm. I'm not a canopy coach or anything like that. I have some experience, and I have made a parachute go very fast to the ground. You know, I fired a Cypress, but so I don't take everything that I say for law, but I think we can continue to spread the awareness of understanding the equipment that we're choosing and understanding the risks that are involved with what we're doing.
Do you know off the top of your head what's the difference in speed for the expert mode versus what is it? What's the other mode called?
78 and 93.
Yep.
That's the difference. So it's 78, and that's vertical speed.
Correct.
Yeah.
78 miles per hour or 93 miles per hour.
Yeah. I may be wrong in this. I think it's actually in a meters per second acceleration, and then so there would be maybe a slight difference when you do the conversion, but eventually it's 78.93.
It's so interesting because that type of, I mean, would we call that a malfunction? I mean, I wouldn't call that a malfunction. What would you call that? That type of problem or issue, or I don't know. Because technically it's not a malfunction, right? It worked properly. No. It didn't malfunction.
No, the equipment didn't malfunction. I mean, at one point I had a 2 out, so I mean that's a malfunction. But at that point it was very close to the ground, and there was nothing that I could do.
But the AAD didn't do anything wrong.
No,
right?
Absolutely not.
I mean,
no.
But it is very, I guess, interesting to me that issue, that specific problem or issue, is only for people who are pretty advanced, right? I mean, no new jumper is ever going to deal with this. Like, you can't, right?
I mean, what isn't the idea? The idea on the 70, 77 or 78 or whatever it was that nobody's going to reach that limit. And then, of course, as professional swoopers started regularly breaking that, then you've got people who there was a block of time where there were a lot of people who just didn't turn it on, and that's not a great solution. So happily, the manufacturer started coming out with this I don't know if you call it an upgrade, the changeable unit thing, and Cypress has it and Vigil has it, and I'm not sure about the Mars or whatever the other one's called. But I mean, if you think about the 93 miles an hour, say the three of us, I know everybody's body size, we're falling on our belly. We're going to be going 120, 124 or 5 miles an hour, something like that, you know. But a little person, say a small female who's falling on her belly doing a solo, you know, is 93 achievable? Like you've got to really balance that with what could a person still be doing in free fall versus what could be happening under canopy. So it's kind of a touchy limit. And in fact, when Nick Russo was on here a few months ago talking about his incident at Scott of Chicago, he accepted the fact in free fall, I don't have an AAD right now because I don't normally jump with one because I want to avoid the situation that something like what Doug was in. And so I think it's great that, you know, Doug has been trying to educate people about this exact issue, because in my opinion, it's very unlikely that people with the expert, is it extreme? What's the top one called?
Speed.
Vigil?
Speed.
Oh, I don't know.
Vigil is extreme, and then Cypress is speed.
Yeah. Speed. So for somebody like I'm on a 75. Doug, you're on a 79?
84. No.
You're on 84. But you know, some pretty heavy wing loadings, and I mean, I was just thinking while listening to Doug, maybe I should just put a fly sight under my helmet and see what I'm getting to, because I'm doing a 450 and I'm loaded at like 2.6 or something like that. So and I don't know how close I'm getting to 93, except when I see professional swoopers and they're talking about speeds less than 93 miles an hour doing whatever degree of turn they're doing, but on a much smaller canopy than I'm on. But that's very anecdotal. That's not very scientific.
No, and Russ, I think you bring up a good point that, you know, now we're at a point in the sport where we have a lot of data gathering tools. Like we have a fly sight. They're affordable. I mean, if you're willing to spend whatever $4,000 it is on one of those types of parachutes, you should be able to spend an extra $200 to get a fly sight and understand what speeds you are going to be reaching. This is the thing that I wish more people did, is that they did the research. And again, I'm not saying that everyone doesn't do this, but like we have the ability to get the data on what's happening. And there's no reason that you shouldn't be doing that if you're going to enter the realm of flying those parachutes and doing big turns. It just doesn't make sense to me. Understand the gear that you're doing, or understand the gear that you're jumping, understand its limits, and then get as much data as you can. You know, we're at a point in the sport where data is readily available. We can gather data. And I mean, it's something that we're starting to do in big ways with free fall speeds, is we're using fly sights and ProTracks to gather the data to understand what the fall rate change is between when we build a base of 40 up to 200. And we should have the same data. We can calculate and gather the same data under canopy as well. And that's something that people need to be doing if they're good. In my opinion, that's something that people need to be doing when they're starting to go into that, doing big turns, multiple revolution rotations, things like that. Because also, like, if you're going to be doing that stuff, at least in my opinion, you know, you're doing it to get better. And if you don't have data on what you're doing, then you're never really going to get better. Like, by feel, yeah, you can feel things out. But at the same time, like, if you don't know exactly what altitude you're starting your turn, how long your turn is, all of those things, that's what that canopy coaches will tell you, then how are you actually going to progress? Like, if you're not gathering data, then, I mean, then don't do a 450. Like, there's no reason to, you know? Like,
yeah.
Well, and I'm on a 129. I've never done a turn bigger than 100 degrees, 90 degrees, you know. I mean, I'm a baby when it comes to canopy piloting. But talking with other people and a few people who are very experienced, like, you know, very good canopy pilots, people tell me that they've not consistently, but that they have broken 100 miles an hour, right? Like, I mean, that is possible, right? 93 doesn't sound, I'm not saying they do 100 miles an hour every single time. I'm just saying that 93 sounds, it doesn't sound that fast.
Yeah. So
how hard would it be to break 93 miles an hour?
I don't know data. I think you would be over a 3.0 wing loading doing something multi-revolution. But
so
again,
did you guys see the video of
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish.
I was just going to say, like, before I got hurt, I was like super into canopy and pushing myself and pushing the parachute and all of that. Like my everyday jumping was a 2.8 wing loading, and my standard turn was a 450. But I mean, after I got hurt, I mean, realistically, like I can't run as fast. I can't risk it. You know, I had to mitigate all of that risk. I mean, yeah, I still fly an 84 and I slide some of my landings in. But at that time, I mean, I was very in tune. I knew exactly when I was starting my turn. But now at this point, you know, I'm 5 years post injury at this point. I backed off just a little bit. I mean, I do like a lazy 180, which is probably people will say that's not the best turn to do, but, yeah, I mean, I'm not pushing myself in that regard anymore. So I'm not as current at the highest level that people are right now with where the canopy piloting is going. So anyways, I don't really know where I was going with that, but go ahead, Russ.
I was just going to ask if you guys had seen that video of Nick Batch crashing in Eloy when he was on, I want to say a 55.
Oh my gosh.
And Nick's not a big guy. I would venture he's about 140 or 150 pounds, slick. And I think in the text, he was very descriptive in his posting about what had happened. And I think in the text, he said when he clipped the buoy, he was going 93.
Wow.
I think that's the exact number he said. So that to me means that I'm far from that possibility. But again, it's very anecdotal. I'm not jumping a fly site. And so it actually, I might buy one.
They just came out with fly sight too. It's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, what if you put a fly sight on your helmet and you look at it on the next two jumps and you realize you're going like 90, 91 every time, dude?
Man, that'd be really tough because I'm not going to jump without a Cypress and or an AAD and
I mean, what do you? Yeah,
I don't know. I would have to start thinking about kind of what Doug said, that my focus in skydiving typically is formation skydiving. It isn't canopy piloting, and I don't.
Russ, I highly doubt that you're getting close to.
Yeah, I don't think so.
In the 90 range. Yeah, I mean, like you said, when Nick clipped the buoy, he said he hit the buoy at 93, and for people to reach that speed below the activation altitude, I mean, we're talking about like the top 1%, in my opinion. Again, I don't have all the data, but you know, before people make any decision about the equipment that they're jumping, they need to gather the data.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that's kind of the thought.
You know, it would be awesome is that if at some of these canopy competitions, I don't know if this is probably a stupid idea, probably not even feasible, but if they had a bunch of fly sites and they just issue one to every person just for posterity, just for data's sake, like, hey, wear this during the competition so we can gather all this data and figure out where everybody's at, and then give the fly sites, dude, that would be so awesome. We'd have so much data. You do that 4 or 5 competitions.
All of them are already doing that. They all
are they?
Maybe I don't want to say all, but I would assume every single, because the World Cup of canopy piloting is happening right now in Eloy.
Yeah.
And I would imagine 99% of the competitors are
using a fly site.
They are data driven, and they're either. I mean, the data's there. We could compile it. It just takes somebody to actually go through the measures.
Cool. That'd be awesome if we could get all that and put it all together. Yeah, man. Well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you got to agree with what Doug is saying at almost every point, though, right? Like an AFF student who learns whatever they call it, their entry point, their turn crosswind, and then their turn to final, or what a lot of canopy pilots will say, first base, second base, third base. When I started swooping, there really weren't, there was no audibles to use for your altitudes. There were no low speed beeps in your audible altimeter, and visuals were just kind of getting going. And so like the first canopy course that I took was with Jay Maletsky, and I was using a Sundial altimeter, and he was like, you got to get rid of that thing like today. Because it's useless under canopy, but what I'm getting to, I guess, is that if you're going to improve your canopy piloting at any level, you need to analyze the data that's available to you. And for an AFF student, that's trying to look at where you are above the ground at each of those points, whether it's 1,000 and 500 and 250 or whatever you use. And if you didn't land where you wanted to land, adjusting that pattern accordingly and making those altitudes at different places so you adjust your bases. And for professional canopy pilots, I'm not surprised. I mean, I haven't been to a meet in a while, but to hear, I would be shocked if anybody at that level wasn't using a fly sight, because you need that data to try and refine what you're doing. Mm. Mm-hmm. And if they're doing it, then all of us could be doing it for $200.
Yeah.
If there was a way to share that data, like with, I don't know who would be the best person to collect it and analyze it and look through it, but man, that'd be so cool. Like think of the blessing and benefit that would be to the entire skydiving community. That'd be cool.
So there's that newer altimeter, the Dakunu. I think I'm saying it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those things are cool.
So from my understanding, and then again, I talked to him a couple of years ago at PIA. When you pair it or when it connects to Wi-Fi, it essentially will download your data because it has a GPS tracker on it and everything. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what they're doing with all the data or if they're even keeping it, but essentially they're a company that has a lot of this data. I mean, it's not at the highest level because from my understanding, that's what they said, or they could.
Awesome.
I'm sure there's a setting that you can turn off and you won't send them your data, but they're collecting data.
That would be so cool.
Are they selling it to Google?
I mean, probably. It's like Tesla, it's not an actual car company, it's a data company.
Right. We're all going down to AI, boys.
Yeah.
Yep. Self-driving, self-talking. So,
Doug, other than you said you dialed it back a little bit on a canopy, how would you say that experience, that 2-out experience, has it changed anything about your skydiving? I mean, I think that you should slide in more of your landings, mostly because I enjoy it, but because when it's not very windy, it's really hard to watch you try to run.
It's painful.
It's so painful. And like, has it changed you in any other way? Has it affected your flying? Is your broken back, like, are you a flatter flyer now? I mean,
yeah,
you rip flatties all day.
Ripping flatties, bro. That's what I do, man. I got 12,000 flatties.
And one hybrid.
Bit, yeah. So, and one hybrid. A couple of free fly jobs. What were we just saying? Body. Yeah. So
is your broken back hard?
Yeah. When my back broke, I was very lucky. There was a large chunk that broke, and imagine that your vertebrae has a bumper. It doesn't, but like the front half of it broke off, and then it crushed. And then what it did was, through immobilization, it actually fused itself to the 2 vertebrae above it and below it, or the vertebrae, the one above and one below, which is good because essentially that's what they would have done if they put metal in my back. So the reason why I explain that is because, it has limited the range of motion through my lower back and my arch, so I'm a little bit flatter in my flying. Now you're really getting into some stuff here. I had to do some things differently. Unfortunately, the leg that I broke really bad is my right leg, and based on my position position in formation skydiving in 4-way, prior to the incident, I was on the tail, and now I'm in outside center, which means that outside of the aircraft, my right leg, because we're left-hand door aircraft, my right leg is usually my power leg. So I had to find a new way to do a lot of the things that I used to be able to do, especially in the year coming back. because one, I didn't have the strength in my leg and it was very, very painful. I had to have a different setup in the door for some exits. I remember our first wind tunnel competition back was the wind games, and all of our entrances into the tunnel we did totally different because I couldn't stand in the door on one leg. And actually, Pete Allen was commentating for the meet, and he was been like, man, through the first day of competition, he was like, I don't understand why Rhythm is doing it this way. This is not the most efficient way. This is not the way everybody else is doing it. And then I saw him that evening, and he was like, what's going on? And I was like, well, because I physically can't stand on that leg. And it's very painful. And like, I was missing a large chunk of the bone in my tibia, which is the weight-bearing bone in your lower leg. And essentially it was just all held together with screws and shit. And so there would be times where it would kind of like spike in pain. So what we had to do is modify exits and things like that. Currently, I have some range of motion issues in my ankle because all the metal's still in it. But, you know, something that they tell you when you go through a traumatic injury is that like you'll have a new normal or you'll have a new way of doing things. And in the beginning I was like, whatever, I'll be fine. That's not for me. But no, I mean, it's true. Yeah. You have to figure out a new way to do stuff, and you can either be like, woe is me and I'm not going to do it, or you just fucking figure it out. So yeah, there's some things that I have to do differently. Like the angle that my foot is placed, you know, so that I have more weight going through my femur part and I can kind of balance it a little bit better. But I mean, a lot of it's still in recovery. You know, I still focus on ankle mobility, increasing the strength in my leg, range of motion, all kinds of things like that. I mean, yeah, I mean, essentially my leg exploded. So yeah. I just.
Did you say it was compound?
Mm-hmm.
Man, in high school playing soccer, I had a tib fib on my right leg. I broke them in half. They were, I think, pretty clean breaks, but that was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. So I can't imagine that, but worse. Like yours was so much worse, man.
Yeah, your body goes into shock. Like
I guess, yeah.
I don't like it wasn't when I looked down and I knew I was going to hit the ground. All I just thought was like, oh man, this is going to be really bad. And then on the ground, you're just like, well, I mean, you don't process the pain, or at least I didn't really. Like I knew I was hurt, but I was vocal with the EMTs and everything, and I was like, yeah, my leg's broken, my other foot is broken, and my back's broken, and they're like, are you sure? And I was like, I'm pretty sure. Those are the places that are burning right now, so I assume that means they're broken.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then side note, you mentioned Pete Allen. He what a cool guy.
Yeah, he's great, man.
We have a course coming. Cool. We're his course is in post production right now for Crave, so we're putting his course together. Hopefully have it out soon. But
what is he doing a course in? What is he doing a course in?
Yeah, it's like
are you allowed
we're
to talk
actually
about
struggling. It? No, that's a very good question. I'm hesitating because we're struggling to come up with a name, like a title for the course, because it's not what it is it covers like it's really designed for a person who has just finished AFF. You got your A license. And now what? Like there's so much stuff that you don't know about the way that skydiving works, like going to a new drop zone, dealing with manifest, talking to the pilot, being a good, like, what does it mean to be a good skydiver at a drop zone? How do you help the drop zone operate well? How do you be a good skydiver in that community and in that scenario? So he covers he goes over all kinds of stuff. So realistically, like if either of you guys watched the course, you probably wouldn't learn anything. But for someone who's just got their A license, or even just as a newer, younger jumper, it's so valuable. I mean, there's so much really good information where he just helps you kind of get over that. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys can remember what it's like when you first start skydiving. You feel, especially you go to a new place, you're like, what's going on? You know?
Yeah, essentially, we wrote an app for that. It's the Rhythm Skydiving 101 app, and literally everything that you just stated is a video tutorial on like, what do I do when I show up to the drop zone? Where do I go to manifest? But it was under the same premise, like it's a free app for everybody, and they wanted to like, what do I do once I got my license? Because like your hand is let go, and what do you do?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that, and that is. I mean, that's where we lose the most skydivers, right? Between A license and B license. Like, that's why the A license numbers are so high and the B license numbers are like, I don't know, maybe a half of that. The retention rate between just getting your license and then continuing on to the sport, because you don't have an instructor or a coach there all the time. I mean, I think that's something that everyone in the community can focus on, is the retention rate between A and B licenses.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of like once you get your A license, then all of these doors open up to you. I mean, so many different, like path. Do you want to focus on free flying? Do you want to focus on RW? Do you want to focus on canopy? Do you want to work towards 200 jumps so you can wingsuit? Do you want like so many things? You know, do you want to try to get your AFF? Do you want to get your like camera flying? All this stuff. So having I think a lot of people, maybe not, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think some people feel like a little bit kind of not lost, but overwhelmed because there's just so much now. And like you said, no clear direction, no guidance, no clear path forward. Now, what do I do? How do I move forward?
I think you're exactly right. From that point, that point previously in their skydiving career, everything has been scripted. Like, these are the goals that you have to achieve. This is what you have to do. And then now, okay, like, you're good to go on your own. And a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of reasons behind this, like the psychology of their personalities. Are they outgoing? Are they gonna, try to go on jumps with other people? Are they goal driven or oriented? If they don't have that path continue to be spelled out for them, then a lot of people will lose interest. I mean, what we do is high risk, and it is expensive and time consuming. And you'll get to a point where if they're not continuing to achieve things throughout their skydiving career, or not feeling like they're reaching milestones, then I think that's a part of why the retention rate is low. I mean, I don't know if it's low, but that's a part of reason why we don't.
Why the retention rate is what it is.
It is what it is, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, we have one guest in the audience, so I wanted to say hello.
Oh, cool.
Oh, we do.
See if they got any questions. Good. Could be Steph.
Who's the guest?
I'm not sure. Could be. She likes to watch. So, all right, Doug. So I was thinking that you could tell us a little bit about your current team, and also that you could maybe talk a little bit about the big wave stuff that you do.
Sure. Current Rhythm lineup. We will be entering our second year with this lineup. So myself and two other members, or actually including the videographer, 3 members, that'll be our third year together. We are super happy with our performance thus far. We picked up Steve Lofek about a year ago right now. And then in the past year, we competed at the World Cup in Voss and placed 5th in open and 6th overall. And then at the Nationals of this year, we placed 3rd in open. We were super happy with our performance. It was a new high average for everyone else on the team with the 21.7. And then we also set a North Carolina record in the first round, and we won the fastest sequence of the meet with 48 points. We had a 52 pace, busted down to a 48, and we won that round.
Okay, hold on. So, explain some of that, because I don't know everything you just said. 21.7, and then from there on, you said a few other numbers and different things. Talk me through some of that. I want to understand it.
So over 10 rounds, we take an average of the score over all the rounds. So at the end of 10 rounds, we had a cumulative total of 217 points, which would be a 21.7 average for the meet.
Okay, and those points, those points basically means that you're turning points, right? For every different formation you take grips, that's a point. Is that?
Yep.
I mean, that's probably an oversimplification, but
I mean, a lot of people don't understand that you have to be on and off at the same time. So you have to have simultaneous separation as well.
Okay.
And just for the people who don't maybe do a lot of formation skydiving stuff, 20 points average is a pretty big milestone for most teams, and hard to get to. There's no other way to say it. And so to say that a team with a new member first year did a 21.7 is a heck of an achievement.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure it is.
And how long do you have? How many seconds do you have, Doug, to get those points?
35 seconds from when you leave the airplane.
35. So you're getting 21 points. You're doing 21 different formations, taking grips, releasing grips, right? In 35 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's pretty awesome.
On average. Except the first round that was 48. That. 48 is a point and a half per second?
It is
35.
Yeah, it's a point every
almost.
7.
Their pace was
Wow.
Yeah.
0.7 of a second
really
per
cool.
point. Yeah, so our pace was 52.
And then you said, what are you saying? Then you said a few other numbers.
So,
what were you saying?
So we talk a little bit more about that. So the first round in competition, round 1, was an all random sequence. So that means it's just random formations. The dive pools consisted of random formations, which is just one formation, and then a block formation, which is a top formation, and then an intermove where people have to turn or do something and then come back together and build a bottom formation. So blocks take longer to achieve. So random formation, and if you have 5 all randoms, super sequence, it's super rare because of the statistics on drawing the draw. But to have that as round 1 in a very fast sequence is unlikely and can be nerve-wracking, I guess, like it because everyone knows that it's got to be fast. So you can make or break the meet on that round. So in the scoring time that we had, we scored, or our pace was 52 formations. We had 4 infringements, so we had 4 busts, so our posted score was a 48.
Wow.
So, and we had the high score of the meet and for that. And that's something super awesome. Yes, just like JRuss said, to have someone, last year, Steve, he did a 13.9, I believe was his highest average that he had done. And then this year to bring him up to speed, and for him to do a 21.7 average and then to do a 48 in competition and win the round is it's something I've never done and not many people will ever be able to do. So it's a huge testament to him, and it just means that we're confident we chose the right person to join the team. I mean, he's a great skydiver and he's just a phenomenal person as well. All of the guys are. Everybody on the team is. They're great ambassadors for the sport. That's
really neat, man. That's so cool.
Yeah. We're super happy.
JRuss and Doug, you guys don't ever compete against each other, though, right? I mean, these are 2 different. You guys compete in 2 completely different.
Well, interestingly,
he's gonna go.
So this year, I think I told you, Chris, that I was asked to be on a 4-way tummy team. For nationals, which I did do.
That's why I was asking that question. I kind of wanted to bring it up.
And, but my teammates were interested in a category other than open. So I was not directly competing with Doug. And had I directly competed with Doug, I would have lost badly. However, there is an interesting idea because, there's always a little bit of interdiscipline jabbing or competition or whatever. Rivalry. Yeah, sure. Who's the better skydiver? So the interesting thing would be to take a team like Doug's and make a draw, and my VFS team does the draw on their belly, and Doug's team does the draw on their belly, and then we do the draw vertical.
Okay.
And then we decide from that Okay, well, who has actually the better average?
Oh,
and
I think he's issuing a challenge, Doug.
I'm
you
not
might
really.
watch out.
The thing is, my VFS team they're not bad on their belly, and so we would get our asses kicked, but we would score points every round for sure. And then when we switched over to the vertical side, I don't know that Doug would say with confidence that they're going to score points in every round.
We might get the exit just from pure gusto.
Yeah.
So it would be an interesting competition, but I think that, and it doesn't necessarily mean who's the better skydiver. It's just a funny sort of throw down the gauntlet and see what happens.
What I think we should do is like mix the teams together.
Oh yeah, well, I've seen Doug free fly, and I don't know how much I can hold him vertical.
Hey, I was off the net in the tunnel once. That was a long time ago. I thought that you would do the draw on your heads, or in VFS, and then we would do the draw on our bellies and have the same draw, but whatever your draw is in our draw, and then compare.
Well, we did that at nationals, and you guys, I think, scored higher than us. Although I think we outscored you in Belgium or in Norway.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, just barely.
Are the JRuss, are the numbers, like points per round, similar for VFS? Do you guys get similar numbers?
We generally score an average that's slightly lower than like if I'm at the meet and I'm keeping up with the belly team that's in first place as far as an average, then I'm pretty happy, because normally we're a couple points off that pace on average.
Okay.
Yep. Big way stuff, Doug? What do you do with 100 people at a time?
Mate, so the new trend in big ways is the total break sequential. So what that means is that everybody has to break grips and take a new grip from points 1, 2, and 3. So you can't repeat a cycle, or you can't repeat a grip until the 4th point. And this kind of came from the old sequential rules, where it was 35% of the grips had to change and subgroups no larger than 4. So what that meant was that if there was myself and then 3 people on me, and I went from an arm to a leg, that counted as 4 grips that changed. And you could keep the center together, so when I was a part of the 219,
let's translate that to a lot of people who don't understand. It was dumb. It meant that most of the formation could just hold on, and a few people could change, and that counted as a new point, which for a lot of people just didn't go that well. So there's communities on both free flying and Tommy that are trying now what Doug is saying, which is obviously much harder. A total break sequential record is way, way, way harder than breaking a sequential record in the past.
Yeah, so just based on the data that we have right now, so the current sequential record, with the old rules, is a 2.219 way and a 3.217 way. And I was a part of that. And now the new total break rules, the 2-point record is 128 or 130, somewhere in that range. So like almost half. And then actually in a couple of days, they're going to go for the new 3-point record, which is 112. So you can see how much smaller the formation is because of the difficulty level. And it's really interesting, right? Like, it has revitalized, I think, the big way community, and continued to drive more interest in it, and to see the multi-point 100+ way formations, and where everybody has to fly. Just like Russ was saying, in the previous rules, you could have the center 80 or 100 people not move, and even more than that on a 200 way, and still get the record. so like only the people on the outside are having fun. Everybody has fun, but this challenge has opened it up for everyone to up their flying skills. And the way the rules are written, like it can essentially become a math problem because you only have so many places that you can take grips on somebody, and then if you try to eliminate 180-degree turns, which isn't very likely in a 3-point record, there's only so many things that you can start doing, or you have to become very, very creative with the engineering behind it. Like we just set the Illinois state record this summer with a 2.76 way, and we had engineered it for a 3rd point as well. But just the engineering behind that to make sure everyone has a different grip on points 1, 2, and 3 is very challenging. And essentially, you either have to, at one point, you have like a 4-way base, and then the shape will change. And then at some point, you have to make it a larger formation base. So you have an 8-way base. It's just the way all of the engineering of building the formations works. It's super interesting to me. I really enjoyed like figuring all of that out.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. But that's like the new trend everything's going right now. And like I said, there's a world record attempt that's starting in Eloy in 3 days, I believe, and they're going for a 3.112 way.
Who's organizing that? Do you know?
Airspeed and they're called the Power Games, which is Dieter and Milko and a couple people from the Europe area.
That's cool.
They tried last year in France. I think it was last year. They tried a 3.100 and maybe 100 way or 105 or something like that, and they were one grip off like 4 different times from completing the record. So yeah, you got close. It's always how it is, right? But,
yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, big ways in general are there's a resurgence coming, which is super cool, and has been a goal of mine to make that happen. Like, one, bring the big way community into younger jumpers in age and younger jumpers in jump numbers. There always used to be this old stereotype that big ways are only for older skydivers like JRuss. They figured that that's all they did. But it's interesting. It's interesting and very cool to see the recurrence. It's coming back, and not only are the individuals younger in age, but they're lower in jump numbers. I mean, a big goal was to make it more achievable for people to get into the big way community. So I started a big way school that's been fairly successful in the last couple of years, and we started to set some state records. And it's very rewarding, and I think it's a great thing for the sport. We're seeing that all over the country and all over the world, actually.
I mean, I think that's kind of a. Oh, sorry. I just think that's a testimony to skydivers. Like, we like being challenged, and that's what. Yeah. I mean, that's what I hear you saying, is that they've opened up an opportunity where we can challenge ourselves to do something hard. Skydivers, we like doing hard things, and like that's cool, man. That's cool.
I mean, it kind of goes back to the whole like. Oh. You go ahead.
Nope, you go. No, mine can wait.
I was going to say, it's very similar to the retention rate A license, right? Continue to set goals for people to achieve. Like, my next big goal is that I'm going to organize a 250 way to break the Illinois state record in 2025. And like, we have a plan already set out of how we're going to make that happen. Okay, so we need to give people the opportunity to do 100 ways. So, okay, we have a list of 100 ways that people can do. But having people with a drive to continue to push the sport forward. And I think with the rule change in the total break arena in the big way community is a big part of that. Now we can set more records, and it's more difficult to set those records, things like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask if you had any thoughts about the possibility of breaking the current record.
Which record?
The 400, the big way, the big way.
The big way. Something that large needs some sort of government support. It's just not, in my opinion, it's not economically feasible for a civilian operation to go to 450 or 500. I mean, the aircraft that we'd have to use. So, like, just think the first 300 way that they did, they used 15 aircraft. 15, I think they were all Twin Otters, actually. I mean, Dan BC's told me this story many times. They were supposed to do it in some South American country at a C-130s. Obviously, whatever happened, and they couldn't go, or the aircraft weren't going to be there. So essentially, they took every Otter, like, west of the Mississippi and did a 300 way. So when we get into those numbers, like, we need C-130s, and the only people that have those are governments, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean,
so we
we're
would
talking
need
about
some
military.
some sort of government support, and it would still be.
So
I don't think it's unfeasible or not achievable, but we need some sort of government that wants to do it at their country to celebrate something, I think.
So for anybody that doesn't know what the current one is, it's 400. It was in Thailand 10 years ago? Like
more. I think
more.
Oh, fly.
Yeah, it was longer more. Yeah,
definitely more than 10.
It was longer than that. It was
and
like
10 years ago. It was 2013.
Yeah, and that's an interesting tip. So yeah, for sure longer than that. So probably 15 years ago at least.
I think it was 2005. I think.
Yeah, and that was the government participation, giving over, letting them use military C-130s to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people who think that it might happen. But what Doug is saying is very relevant. When I was working in Dubai, part of my job at one point was to try to assist the 500 way they were going to try to do, which was going to break that record, and it was going to be sponsored by Skydive Dubai, kind of. And there was a breakdown in that because the UAE government had made a pledge to give the C-130s, and then they said, well, sorry, we can't do it. And so I was tasked with trying to find another source. And the only other source that I could find was an Italian company who said that they could do it at the low cost of $10 million.
So did y'all do it?
No, it
why didn't you do it? Write a check, JRuss.
Was that for 5 aircraft?
It was 5 aircraft with 1 or 2 on standby. No, it was 7 total. 7 total aircraft, but you needed 14 crews because they could only be above whatever the altitude is, say arbitrarily 20 grand for a certain period of time. And so they needed another set of crews, and they would alternate loads to make sure that the crews didn't go over their time. It was wildly expensive. So it ended up just being this big kind of snafu, and getting a bunch of people back their registrations and airfare, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
But it definitely brought me up to speed on the logistic difficulty of going to these bigger and bigger numbers, especially for belly guys, because you can correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but like when we send out a free fly group, as of, for instance, the last record, which we were going for 200, quite a bit smaller, but we had a base that left from a Skyvan, and then we had groups of flyers coming from both directions. Some entire plane loads got out before the base got out, got on their back and started floating up, and then the other half of the formation dove out after the base and dove down. And to my knowledge, belly guys don't do that. You kind of all are divers, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, so there are some floaters. So if we think about it, I'm just trying to think of an airplane real quick. So we can put 5 or 6 people outside, and then maybe the first row of 3 would be like a dive floater almost, depending on airplane placement. So we would have maybe a quarter. If we think that there's 20 people on an otter and I got 5 people outside, a quarter of them are floating from all the aircraft.
Okay.
But primarily everybody is diving. So the way we engineer it is in most cases when you have a formation of more than 3 aircraft, and even with 3 aircraft, we'll have a super floater. So we have one person that leaves, you guys have the same thing, that leaves just a bit early. Our timing is way different than yours, where your super floater is like 8 seconds, maybe 6. I'm not sure the exact time, but
more.
Significantly more. Okay, 10. Where our super floater would go like maybe 2 seconds before. And what that does is then it signals to the rest of the aircraft that they can start exiting the airplane, and then the base would come out. So essentially we're trying to build the same thing where we have some people, if the base is coming out this way, we're having people like down line of flight moving up into it. But because of your speed, it is easier for you guys to have more people floating. Right? It's just physics. That's the way it works, you know. Whereas we're not going as fast, so like our floaters, that delta in fall rate change is harder to achieve. So it's a little bit easier for people to dive on it than it is to float on it. But we still, I mean, I have 5 people, 6 people outside the aircraft, and like I said, depending on the aircraft placement where they are, the first row of 3 people could also be technically considered floaters. But yes, we're a little bit different in that sense, where we're primarily diving and you guys are primarily floating.
And did you say you guys have started collecting data on formations and stuff like that with speed change? I'm so interested. Can you share some of that data with me?
Yeah,
I really want to know.
Absolutely. So we used it quite a bit at the total break sequential record that we did in August this year. So essentially what we wanted to see was, one, the fall rate, the consistent fall rate throughout, and then making sure that the fall rate doesn't change drastically or at all from the key of the first point and then the transition to the second point. I'm trying to remember the data. We were getting, so in the beginning of the skydive, our speeds were like 145-ish, and then it would settle out to about 122 to 125, I believe. And then we would see a pretty consistent 125, maybe a little bit less, so maybe 120.
Wait, with what size formation?
76.
Would still fall at 125?
Mm-hmm.
That seems
base
fast.
Is keeping it going.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to think.
I was expecting it to slow down way more.
Yeah, I mean, that's the data that we were collecting, and it was pretty consistent. Cool. Like we said, so the initial chunk of 8-way, and then so the initial chunk actually was a little bit slow, and then you could see when it would break. Sorry, I'm kind of like going down the hill as the numbers would go, and then it would accelerate. And then as we were building into the 16-way base, it was doing about 145, and then it would start to slow out. And then at 76, we were doing, or 70, 78, doesn't matter. Honestly, I don't remember if it was 76 or 78. It was doing, like I said, like 120, maybe. I think at one point it was slowing down to maybe 118. Again, I'd have to ask one of my other organizers, Gorka. He was my numbers guy, and he would give me all the graphs and everything for it. But it surprisingly stayed very consistent through the fall rate, and then we didn't have a big change between points, which was super good. And we just started doing that.
Even when everyone broke grips, it still stayed the same speed pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
That's
cool.
I
mean, and that's based on equipment and all of that. You know, some people have to wear bigger suits, some people are wearing weight. So I'm in the center of it, and I would be wearing between 17 and 20 pounds is what I was wearing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not a little dude.
Yeah, I mean, the suit that I wear, actually, it was built for a light suit, so it's double layered nylon, and it's actually a little bit slower. And I mean, can't really arch that well anymore. And also, I mean, that's another thing about big waves. Like, I don't want to be at the max end of my fall rate. So, I mean, I wear 17 pounds, so I have the ability to go faster or slower if I need to. Like, if all I have to do is just go as fast as I can, then I have no ability to fly. So I weight myself accordingly. You know, like in the beginning of it, I have to be doing 145, and I need 17 pounds to be able to do that.
Sit fly, bro.
Approach on your back, right?
Yeah. That's
JRuss's answer for everything. Sit fly.
Yeah. So, Dougie Doug, normally we go about an hour, and we pushed up past an hour, but I wanted to have you, just because a lot of the people that I think listen to our podcast are not necessarily at the 12,000 or 15,000 jumps, mark that you said you're at. And so in our last maybe few minutes, could you talk a little bit about how do you feel like is the best way for newer jumpers to think about getting on a belly team or starting a belly team? What do they want to look for, and what could be approaches to, a lot of times I think that when people start teams, their expectations maybe aren't in line with what reality is going to be. And it turns out that the team doesn't last. And so, what do you think people should be thinking about, and how can they maybe set themselves up for success if they do want to get into this realm?
Okay. How to go about it? I mean, honestly, come to camps and workshops as much as you can, for sure. Talk to as many people as you can. Tell people that you want to do it. A lot of people will be like, "Oh yeah, I want to do a team," but they never say anything. And like, well, how am I supposed to know that you wanted to do this? If you are outwardly saying that you want to do a team, there are a plethora of people that will help you make that happen. First things about being on a team or joining a team is that there needs to be a conversation about expectations, just like you were saying. I mean, time and money are the two biggest constraints. So everyone needs to sort that out and understand and have a plan, develop a plan based on those things that everyone has agreed to. And then once that agreement is made, everyone, one, needs to stick to that, and then two, should not expect anything more than that, because that's also when things go awry, is where they agree on a plan, and then one person on the team wanted to do more, but they agreed to do less in their opinion, and then they get frustrated that people don't want to do more. And you're like, well, we agreed to this plan, and this is what we wanted to do. And some of those conversations are hard to have because it's about money and time, and that's usually sometimes private things for people, more on the money side. So and have a coach for sure. Even if you don't have a coach every camp, at least have a coach to moderate the initial conversation of building the team and setting expectations. If you can afford a coach for every camp, please do that. And there are a lot of quality coaches. Obviously, myself and the rhythm coaches are great. There's a lot of great people out in Paris as well. I mean, the airspeed guys, XP people for sure. But having an outside perspective is great because, one, they'll tell you what you need to do better. But then two, the dynamic of the group is way better because, it's the group working together. And you don't have an internal leader, and then you don't have all this bickering that happens. So to make it real short, tell people that you want to be on a team. Approach the coaches, SDC Rhythm right here, rhythmskydiving.com. Come talk to us. That is what we do. We build teams. And, we actually put together 12 different teams for the indoor nationals this past year. We had maybe 8 or 9 teams competing at the U.S. Nationals this year that were directly under our control, or other people, the XP people, Airspeed, and people out in California, Christy Firkin. And then have a conversation that may be a difficult conversation in the beginning, but about time expectations and money expectations for the team. Because what we do is an expensive sport. Get a coach for as much as you can. If it comes down to affording a coach for every camp and doing an extra camp, having a coach at every camp is better than being by yourself all season and doing one more jumping camp, in my opinion. Set expectations and then abide by the schedule that you guys have set. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and if anybody's finding difficulty with, they get to the point where they say, well, I want to be on a team, but not sure who in the area wants to be on a team. I've talked to some people. It isn't happening. Signing up for, for instance, rhythm workshops or tunnel workshops is a great way to meet people who have similar interests.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we do that all the time. People meet each other and they're on teams for years together. Yeah. I think that the first thing is let people know that you want to do that. Reach out to the pros or the coaches in your area. And if they can't help you, contact me directly. Like, Doug at rhythmskydiving.com. And I will
email.
I will guarantee you, I will find you a team for the year. I mean, we have many of our services are like that, but for sure, promoting competition is a core value of the program.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, anything else you want to talk about with Rippin' Flatties?
No, man, Rippin' Flatties. I had a lot of fun. I would do this.
Dude, I want to make a T-shirt that says Rippin' Flatties.
Rippin' Flatties. Talk to Richo.
I think, yeah, it came from Richo. So if he has a copyright out there, it's from
was
him.
It Richo? No, I think it was the Chemtrails guys. One of those. I don't know. Either one of those guys. Rippin' Flatties.
Maybe Colin.
Probably.
Yeah.
Rippin'
Cool.
Flatties. I
Cool.
love it.
All right.
Well, yeah.
Is it time for me to say it, JRuss?
I mean, unless Doug's got any more old jokes, I mean, I know that's not a common thing.
Any other stories, Doug? You got
when
any stories
you
said
you did your first canopy course with a sundial, I had to bite my tongue so hard. Like, what was it like? Did you have to feed pterodactyls something different? I mean, you were jumping in the times of dinosaurs back then. What was it like?
Yeah, and what's crazy is he wasn't using that as like a euphemism for an old like wrist-mounted altimeter. He means an actual sundial. Like he's actually using a sundial. That's how old he is.
Yeah,
I know, it's amazing.
The best part about this, Chris, you don't get to listen to this very often, is that the old jokes actually come to a stop pretty quick around Sky of Chicago, because all I have to do is say, "Hey, Doug, would you like to just take a jog around the hangar with me and see who wins that race?"
Man, I need that motorized wheelchair.
That'll shut him up real quick.
That was good.
You watch Doug, like if Dave's flying and he's got to run for the next load.
Oh, it's awful.
It's hard. It's hard. It's terrible. It's hard to watch. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Just so everyone
so
understands the old. Yeah.
Well, you've done it again. You've wasted another perfectly good hour listening to the Crave Show with Chris and JRuss, and this week Doug Barron. Thanks for being here, Doug. Man, it's so awesome to have you. I hope if you're listening, I hope you've been encouraged. I hope you've been blessed and learned some cool stuff, heard some fun stories, and we just want to keep doing this. We want to help everybody do more, be better, be safer, learn more, progress. All this stuff, man. It's super fun. JRuss, cool. Thanks, man. Doug,
thanks,
Doug,
so
much.
Thank you, guys. It was awesome.
We loved having you here. Cool. Everybody, get out there, jump out of a plane, get with your friends, have fun. Blue skies. Crave, do more, be better.
See you guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.